Hello and welcome to Salute Your Sports. Common End Chef here with Tom Castleman. Ready for an awesome show? We'll recap the March Madness drama, and oh boy, is there plenty of it. Best stories so far, what have they been? The biggest upsets? I mean, so many of those as well. The biggest individual stars of the tournament. What Cinderella teams we think might still be dancing come Final Four time. Of course, we'll have a revised Final Four and champions. We both have two Final Four teams gone and two Final Four teams left, which is pretty much on par for the course. There's very few people who've got all four at this point. I mean, 2 1 seeds are already gone. We got a 2 seed is gone. So all sorts of drama. So now that the Sweet 16 is set, plenty more to look forward to. And we'll look at some of the action on the ladies' side, too. A lot of upsets there as well. My goodness, March Madness. It is very much real, very much alive. NFL free agency, Tom Castleman. What team has improved the most? QBs in new places who will succeed. I mean, we got Jimmy G in a new place, Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr. What in the world is going on with Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to be a Jet? Is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? Who in the world knows? I can't wait to get started. One other thing we'll talk about, by the way, the World Baseball Classic. I watched the end of it last night, right when we got off the air. I have not been more excited for a finish to a baseball game since the Cubs World Series championship. That's how long it's been. So betting locks of the week, sports trivia as well. Can't wait to get started. Tom, how you doing today?
Doing fantastic. I've had enough time to lick my wounds and get over the fact that my bracket needs quite a bit of help. I mean, you mentioned very few people have all four final teams. Well, the person that I am trailing currently, our good friend Drew Brackett, he still has all four of his Final Four teams available.
He does?
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Who
He's
did he
got
pick
Alabama.
Again?
He's got Alabama. He's got Houston over Alabama in the championship game. He has Tennessee and Gonzaga making it to the Final Four. So he is still he's looking relatively unscathed, but
I gotta shoot him a text.
As the governor in Romeo and Juliet says at the end of the play, all are punished when it comes to the March Madness tournament. It's just a matter of time. But as far as the best storylines so far in March Madness, I mean, we've had a couple of really, really huge upsets. I mean, Princeton taking down Arizona, a team that I thought was going to be ending up in the title game. They fell well short. And more than that, it wasn't because Princeton played some amazing game where they shot really, really well. They just played really, really good defense and let Arizona kind of beat themselves. Arkansas, Pig Sooie beating Kansas in the Arkansas-Kansas matchup that I was happy with it. Even though I didn't pick it, I was tempted to, but that was a good one.
Pumped.
And of course, I think this has been labeled the biggest upset is Fairleigh Dickinson over Purdue. That this is the biggest upset. I think prior to that, technically, it was Norfolk State over Mizzou.
Come on, Tom. Why are you going to bring up these memories? Come on, Tom Castleman. Why you got to be that guy? Come on now.
I'm just stating the facts. Just stating the facts of everything.
Mizzou versus 15 seeds does not fare well in the NCAA tournament.
It has not. It has not this time either, as Princeton Tigers beat Mizzou Tigers, Princeton dancing. So there's a lot of great storylines going around the tournament. What's been the best one for you so far?
Well, you kind of hit on most of the ones I had. I think the best storyline, even though I know Princeton's still dancing, but Fairleigh Dickinson is the best storyline. I think it's the greatest upset in the history of the NCAA tournament. The second time a 16 seed beat a 1, but we had the shortest team in the country in Fairleigh Dickinson against a 7'4" Zach Edey. Are you kidding me? The guy got 11 shots in this game. What in the world is Coach Painter, the Purdue players, the Purdue coaching staff? I mean, look, I know they were doubling him. I know they were denying him.
They were quadrupling him.
11 shots in the game. 7 of 11. He was effective when he had the ball. My goodness. The crazy thing is, I don't know if you saw the pregame stuff. It was sort of bulletin board material. The Fairleigh Dickinson coach was telling his guys, look, the more I watch this tape, the more I think we can win. And Purdue heard about it. And they were upset. And then, well, what happened on the court? I mean, what are we doing, Purdue Boilermakers? Boiler up. Talk about boiler down, man. Holy cow. That was just an upset of epic proportions. Obviously, Fairleigh Dickinson played great, but Purdue, that was on Purdue.
Tight booty syndrome.
Yeah.
They played tight.
Exactly. They did play tight. Very tight for Purdue. I think that's the best storyline. I mean, it's the second time it's ever happened that a 16 seed's beaten a 1. I think the Princeton one is a good story as well. By the way, they beat Mizzou. They beat Arizona. I believe I had it written down. Maybe it's a little lower down, but it's only a handful of 15 seeds. I believe 4 now in the Sweet 16 all time.
There was there was St. Peter's last year. There was Oral Roberts 2 years ago.
And Dunk City.
Yeah.
FGCU. So I think it's 4 teams. So that's a pretty cool storyline. I can't pick that. As a Mizzou fan, I cannot pick that as the best storyline. Come on. I'm a Mizzou grad. There's no way I'm picking Princeton as the best storyline. I did love one of their players, though, channeling his inner Kevin Garnett. Anything is possible. That was cool. One other storyline that I really like that you didn't mention, actually. How about Florida Atlantic as a 9 seed? They had never, ever, ever, ever won an NCAA tournament game. They've now won 2. They're in the Sweet 16. The Owls, that is an awesome, absolutely awesome story for them, Florida Atlantic. How about Arkansas, man? Coming down from 8 at the half to beat the defending national champs, Kansas. Arkansas is 1 win away from their 3rd straight Elite 8 appearance. Talk about a program that's doing things right. Love Eric Musselman taking that shirt off. Man, that dude is fit. I can only hope to be that fit when I'm his age. I'm like younger than him, and I'm nowhere close to that fit. Shout out to Musselman. Wave that shirt around, baby. So I think obviously the storyline of Houston still alive, looking to make the Final Four, and Houston's great. One that I'm super pumped about is this awesome rematch of UCLA versus Gonzaga on Thursday. They met in probably the greatest college basketball game of all time. One of the best sports games ever, period. 2 years ago in the Final Four, it was a half-court buzzer beater from Jalen Suggs to win the game and make the championship. Talk about iconic. Drew Timme, by the way, played in that game. Jaquez, Tiger Campbell for UCLA. So some familiar faces. I know it was 2 years ago. Most of the teams are different, but a lot of the stars are still there. The coaches are still there. It's fresh in a lot of these people's minds. So that's a storyline that I'm looking forward to upcoming here in, I think it's tomorrow, actually. We're recording on Wednesday. It's tomorrow, this UCLA Gonzaga game. Awesome tournament so far. The madness has been great. Brackets aside, enjoy this. Enjoy this. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, a couple other storylines that I really liked. I mean, of course, Michigan State, Tom Izzo. Everybody likes to attribute Tom Izzo and his teams to having this step up when it comes to March time,
including me,
for madness. And that's kind of a byproduct of a couple of different things. I mean, obviously, he's a really good coach, but it's also a byproduct of he usually puts his team through a meat grinder in their non-conference schedule, so that when they get to this tournament, they've seen a lot of different teams, a lot of really, really good teams. And even if their record's a little bit deflated because they've played such a tough non-conference schedule, this is a program that he is able to get going this time of year. And actually, as a 7 seed, currently favored over Kansas State to making it to the Elite 8. Another good storyline, I think, is injury. It was something that we were talking about coming into this tournament. And just to go over a couple of different teams, Houston with Marcus Sasser, they're in the Sweet 16. UCLA missing Jalen Clark, one of their top players. They're still dancing. You've got Tennessee, their point guard goes out with an ACL injury. He's done for the season. They're dancing in the Sweet 16. You go down to, let's see, I think Xavier, I think their top player's name is Roundtree. He's out. They're dancing in the Sweet 16.
Roundtree,
all of these
former
teams,
Mizzou running back?
I don't know if it's him.
I'm just kidding.
But
it's not him.
It's all these teams overcoming this adversity to get to this point. I mean, yeah, we talk about the Cinderella stories and all the great storylines that come out of that. But how about the big time programs overcoming big time hurdles? Miami with Norshad Omier. I know that he's playing, but he's kind of playing a little bit hobbled. I mean, great job on these coaches, great job on all of these players to pick up their teammates, and great job on these teams that if their stars are playing at less than 100%, still going out and giving a good enough heroic effort to get their teams to this point. I mean, once you've reached the Sweet 16, for I think really none of these teams, considering that there's no real consensus. I know a lot of people picked Houston to win it all. I don't know how confident folks feel with that. I mean, there were a lot of missed free throws on Auburn that would have really hurt
Terrible.
Houston and could have buried them. We could be talking about 3 seeds out prior to the Sweet 16 in this tournament. I mean, this is a season where, looking at all these teams, I think at this point, none of them can say they're disappointed if they don't end up making it to the Elite Eight, the Final Four type of thing. Like, this is how wide open this tournament is this year. That's how much adversity all these different programs have been going through. So I think those are two over the big storylines, as well as overcoming those hurdles as we get to this point of the season.
Yeah, I got one more. The unheralded stars stepping up. I know I'll talk about this guy in a segment coming up, but one name that comes to mind is Texas's Dylan Disu, 5th leading scorer on that team, averaging under 10 points per game, dropped 28 in the last game. And he's just a handful of guys. I mean, Houston had one of their lesser players step up. Arkansas had a huge performance from a lesser named guard. I mean, a lot of these players stepping up for their teams. That's how you win in the tournament. You get guys to step up. Actually, they were interviewing Jay Wright, not interviewing. He's an analyst on Inside March Madness. Jay Wright, the great Villanova coach, and he was talking about, I believe it was Calvin Booth, who had an incredible national championship game. Now, he wasn't like a star player for them, and he's the reason why they won. He stepped up in the big game. So I know a lot of times we focus on the stars carrying their teams, but some of these, second, third, fourth, fifth options are stepping up. I mean, Texas's 5th leading scorer, Dylan Disu, puts up 28 points in the round of 32. They don't win without that. They would have lost to Penn State without that performance. That was definitely very huge.
Absolutely. And one just like last little storyline to touch on before we move on to best player, Mitch Henderson, the coach for Princeton, coaching his team in the Sweet 16, also was playing for Princeton, I believe, on that Final Four run that they had. So another fun storyline, the coach coaching for the alma mater where he played. Moving on to some of the top players of the tournament, as I mentioned, not necessarily star-studded teams, not like we've had in the past. There are no Anthony Davises, Kevin Durant's, Derrick Rose's, I think probably
Curry.
the biggest star. Yeah, Stephen Curry. I think probably the biggest star, just simply because he's been around forever and a half, is Drew Timme from Gonzaga. But there, Jaime Jaquez as well. Are some really, really good players. Are there any other guys, Common, that jump out to you as stars of the tournament so far?
Yeah, I think the star of the tournament has been Marquise Noel for Kansas State. He is the best point guard in the country, probably. I'll give you his lines the 2 games so far. By the way, if you watch some of the highlights, dude is throwing behind-the-back passes. The man is super flashy. He's been, for me, no question, the best player in this tournament. First game, 17 points, 14 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 steals. Shot 7 of 12, 3 of 6 on threes. Second game against mighty Kentucky, 27 points, 9 assists, 3 steals. Again, shot 50% from the field, 10 of 11 on free throws. For 2 games right now, he's averaging 22 points, 12 and a half assists, 3 steals per game, shooting better than 50% from the field, almost 50% on threes, and he's only missed 1 free throw. The guy is balling out right now. Again, like I said, crazy passes. I mean, behind-the-back passes. He's been great all season, by the way. Shouldn't be a surprise. 7.8 assists per game, the second highest in the nation. He's a 5th-year senior having his one shining moment. This guy played at Little Rock, smaller school. Transfers to K-State, I know he played a few less games one year, but I don't know if it's because of the COVID fifth year or what it is, but he's a fifth-year senior. Talk about experience. Maybe he hasn't played at the highest level in the tournament consistently, but he's played a lot of college basketball games, and the dude has been the star. I know there's not one huge name, but he's been the best for me. Jaime Jaquez, that you mentioned, is having a very nice tournament. 17 points, 8 rebounds, 5 steals the first game. 24 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists in the second game. Without that performance, UCLA is out of the tournament right now. I mean, without Noel, Kansas State out of the tournament against Kentucky. So then Drew Timme, I got to agree with Drew Timme, the stash, your favorite player, 21 points, 6 rebounds, then 28 and 8, averaging about 25 and 7, shooting well over 50%. So those are big. Maybe Timmy's not your favorite lately because of his language. The man likes to drop some F-bombs on the air, Tom Castleman. You hear his interviews?
Oh, well, yeah.
He drops those F-bombs. I don't know. You were going like this. You loved Drew Timme last year. What's happened, Tom? Are you backing off the Timme train?
The bloom is off the rose, so to speak. No, I've got a new guy that I'm rolling with. I'm rolling with Adama Sanogo from UConn, and looking at the tournament he's had so far, I mean, 28 points, 13 rebounds in game 1 against Iona, 24 and 8 against St. Mary's, and shooting, well above 50%, 76.5% in game 1, 68.8% in game 2. And here's the other key. He hits his free throws as well. I mean, UConn is a balanced team. I think out of all of the teams this past weekend, UConn looked probably the best, the most balanced team
Alabama
throughout, with Alabama for you. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, you look at some people are talking about, maybe Iona with Rick Pitino as coach can maybe upset UConn in round 1.
St.
UConn
John's
blows
coach
the doors off of the Gales. And St. John's now, that's a little bit of a different kind of conversation, but blows their doors off by 24, then turns around and smashes St. Mary's by 15. St. Mary's, a team that's beaten Gonzaga, that's been a really, really strong program. And now they're facing Arkansas. I think this is probably the pick I feel the best about. And I'm kind of kicking myself for flip-flopping on this one for the championship, because I was on the fence between Houston and UConn, if you recall. I feel really good about UConn making it to the Final Four, teasing a little bit later segment. But Sanogo, definitely the big man in the middle, has been instrumental in UConn's success this far.
Okay. Our brackets, by the way, continue to be very different. We've both done okay. I mean, look, our brackets are bad, but everyone's bracket's bad. Relative to the rest of the country, we're okay. Not great, not bad. We're just okay. Everyone's bracket's bad. I mean, there's about 2 or 3% of people have a good bracket. About 97% have a bad one. But our bracket, even our revised picks, our second chance bracket, so to speak, it's going to be very different once again, Tom Castleman. By the way, I'm the same as you. I've been flipping back and forth on UCLA. I had him as my champion for about the last month and a half. Picked him to lose in the championship. So that's my team that I should have trusted my gut with as well. But let's keep it rolling. Next segment. Let's talk some upsets, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got Michigan State, a 7th seed, overcoming Marquette to get to the round of 16. Arkansas, of course, we mentioned, over Kansas. FAU over, not really an upset necessarily over Memphis, but that's simply by virtue of the fact that Purdue, the 1 seed, was not there. Princeton, of course, as the 15, knocking off Arizona, and then our hometown, our alma mater, Mizzou Tigers. So out of these teams, will any of them make it to the Final Four, Common? And if so, who do you think is most likely to kind of be the one to kind of upset if you don't think any of them are going to get there?
I think it's 50-50, honestly. I would say I'm about 53% sure none of them will make it. So there's 2 I'm pretty sure won't make it. I mean, look, it's Princeton as a 15 seed. And we've never had a 15 seed in the Final Four. Now, this year's more wide open. There's less great teams than years past. Princeton probably underseeded. They're actually a pretty big team. That's the crazy thing I had someone messaging me, and they were right. Like, Princeton's the bigger team over Mizzou. I know Mizzou's very guard orientated, but you think of the Ivy League school and the SEC school, what's the bigger team? You think the SEC, right? The more taller, more physically menacing team. Princeton was actually a bigger team than Mizzou, but I don't think they will do it. I think they have a shot against Creighton. Actually, I'm going to pick Princeton to cover the 10-point spread. I think they lose the game, but even if they somehow beat Creighton, Alabama in the next game, I mean, that looks like the best team in the country right now. I'm not buying Princeton. Similarly, FAU, not going to buy them either. Nice win against Memphis. One of the better 8 seeds, Memphis. Good win to win, against Fairleigh Dickinson. But again, they didn't beat anybody overwhelmingly great. They got a step up in competition coming up against Tennessee, right? They're playing Tennessee. Tennessee, actually, they have a chance to beat Tennessee because Tennessee goes in very hot and cold shooting stretches. They're very up and down. I know their leading scorer is gone, but I still lean Tennessee in that game. And even if they beat Tennessee, I don't see them beating Michigan State or Kansas State personally. I think they'll be an underdog in both of those scenarios. The one team, and again, this is where our brackets differ, total toss-up, but I think the Razorbacks knock off UConn. I think Arkansas is a very tournament-savvy team. They've been in 2 straight Elite Eights, looking to make it 3. Nothing phases these guys. Eric Musselman's a great coach. They were down 8 at the half against Kansas. Come back and win the game. They made all the clutch plays down the stretch. You would have thought they were the national champion if you watched the end of that game against Kansas, not the other way around. I know Kansas did lose a lot of players off last year's team. I know Bill Self wasn't there either. So that definitely helped Arkansas. But still, now that was a very good KU basketball team, a 1 seed. UConn is very inconsistent. They started the season, they were ranked number 1 at one point, and they struggled, and they played great down the stretch. They played great in the tournament. I don't trust their consistency. I like the Arkansas team. Council the fourth is a great player. 3 leading scorers are all guards. 5 of the first 6 leading scorer are guards. Guards win in the NCAA tournament. We've seen that a lot of times. I shouldn't have gone Purdue with Zach Edey. He's not a guard, right? The guards are usually what carries teams in March Madness. Arkansas has a lot of really good guards. I think they beat UConn. Again, I'm about 53% sure. Not guaranteeing it by any means, but I do think they beat UConn, and then they would play in the next game UCLA. I've got UCLA winning it all, so for that reason, I'm not going to pick Arkansas to beat UCLA, but I think they have a real chance because of their tournament experience, because of how well coached they are, because of how clutch they are. So that's my squad. Michigan State, again, they have a chance. I think Kansas State's going to beat them, though. I do think K-State's better. If I'm not picking them to win the next game, how can I pick them to make the Final Four? So Woo Pig is the most likely. I would say Michigan State the second most likely, but I'm leaning that neither gets to the Final Four. I do have Arkansas in the Elite Eight, though, Tom.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody necessarily makes the Final Four. I'd say the one most likely for me is Michigan State. I mean, they're coming into this matchup against Kansas State favored ever so slightly, 1.5, which I think is more likely because public money is going to be is leaning toward Michigan State and the whole Tom Izzo mythos and everything like that. I don't actually necessarily think Michigan State is that much of a favorite. This is kind of like a toss up, but these are 2 teams that like to be very physical, make this a bit of a rock fight, which Michigan State absolutely can go ahead and win. And then, Michigan State wins that game. Who are they going up against? They're going up against a Florida Atlantic team, which has, been fairly balanced, but certainly that's not, the same level of quality of a Kansas State or a Marquette or anything along those lines. Actually, I'm looking at KenPom right now.
Well, they might go up against 21. Tennessee.
And they might go up against Tennessee, but Tennessee barely beat Louisiana in round 1.
Look good against Duke.
I think they were just
who's
They
been good.
stylistically were a good matchup against Duke. I thought coming
Okay.
out of that one, well, Duke's got the scores and everything, but Tennessee said, "How about we just hit you really hard, see how you like scoring at that point, just out physical you throughout the game."
Sure.
I mean, you're holding a Duke team down to like what was like 52 points or something like that. But Michigan State, they're the type of team that they're ready for that type of battle back and forth. I absolutely think that of all the teams, Michigan State is the most likely to make it to the Final Four, if only because they have the easiest path. I mean, Arkansas definitely has NBA talent on their team, but you're going up against a really, really strong UConn team, and then you have to go through a really, really strong UCLA or Gonzaga team. That's tall timber to be hacking down. I think Michigan's path is a lot more clear. And I'm going to go ahead and say that they do it. I think we're going to have a Big Ten team in the Final Four. It's just not the first or second or third choice that anybody probably thought.
Right.
I mean, we all knew coming into this tournament that out of that bracket, with that whole, like, Ken Pomeroy pointing out the statistic of all these teams that are preseason unranked and get a top 2 seed, and we had Purdue and Marquette, and average of under 2 wins. And what do we have? Only 1 win between those 2 teams. We all knew that some weird team was going to be coming out of this bracket. I think Michigan State can be the one to do it. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Spartans to make the Final Four, which kind of ties into the next segment. Of course, we've got a lot of red on our ledger when it comes to making our bracket picks. So there is some room for revision as far as Final Four and who's going to win it all. To do the quick recap for myself, on the right side of the bracket, that's still looking good. I have Houston and UConn meeting in the Final Four with Houston winning it all. Left side, not so much. I went with Arizona over Duke for reaching the championship game. Neither team faring particularly well in this tournament. So, Common, what is your revised Final Four, and who do you have making it to and winning the championship game now?
Yeah. So I mean, I also got 2 for 4, Tom. Purdue definitely did not hit for me. Did not hit with Indiana was my upset team. Do have UCLA and Alabama still dancing. So I'm gonna go ahead and pick UCLA. I mentioned this to you, on air, off air. Look, about 3-4 weeks ago, I wanted to pick UCLA to win the whole thing. They've got the great experience. They got the great guard in Jaime Jaquez, plays on both ends, defense, offense. Tiger Campbell, experienced point guard, leading the show. I only talked myself out of picking them for the whole thing for 2 reasons. One is I watched the Pac-12 championship title game. They didn't play their best. They didn't win. So recency bias. And 2, they have 1 guard injured. I believe it's their second leading scorer. And then they have a big guy who's more of a role player, but still a key player that's out for them. So it was injuries and recency eye test bias that kept me from picking UCLA. But just looking at their season, what they've done, looking at their experience, looking at how they fared in the tournament the last few years, that to me is the team to beat in the whole NCAA tournament. I mean, look at the other top teams. Well, I guess Houston's kind of been there, but Alabama's kind of fresh. A lot of these other teams are fresh. UCLA, look, probably their 2 best overall players were there in the Final Four 2 years ago. Again, guard-orientated perimeter players. Jaquez more of a small forward shooting guard type, but probably going to play shooting guard in the NBA. So, definitely guard-orientated guys. I do like UCLA to make the championship. I like them to win the whole thing. I'm just going ahead and put it out there. I got UCLA winning the whole thing. That's my pick. My second Final Four pick that's still alive, Alabama, and I think that's the championship. It's going to be UCLA, Alabama. So actually, I felt pretty good about UCLA UCLA as well. But Alabama, I didn't love their. I loved their region. I was going to say there was for me personally, my gut feeling there wasn't a team in their region I thought could beat them, and that still stands true. I mean, who's going to knock these guys off? They're the best in their region by a good margin. And the key to Alabama right now, Brandon Miller, the NBA lottery pick with the whole gun situation. I know there's a lot of controversy around him. Tom, he had 0 points in the first tournament game. He was 5
Mhm.
of 17 in the second tournament game. They won by 21 and 22 points without him playing well at all. I mean, he's been miserable. The guy shooting under 20% from the field for the tournament, he can't buy a basket. And they're still cruising. They've been dominating teams. They've been putting up a lot of points. Speaks to the balance, speaks to the skill. I think Alabama is a shoo-in for the Final Four. Even though I'm picking UCLA to win the whole thing, I actually think the most likely team in the Final Four for me is Alabama, simply because I think their path is a little bit easier. UCLA, I think, got some tough teams in that draw. Gonzaga's a tough team. I think UConn, Arkansas, those are both tough teams. They actually probably have the toughest path of the true big teams. I agree with you, MSU, K-State, that region's the worst, but I don't think any of those teams are necessarily great. I mean, we're looking at the true national contenders. I could be wrong, but it does feel like right now it's probably UCLA, Alabama, maybe Houston, even though I have a feeling Houston's going to get upset simply because their guards have injuries. And then the other team that I like is Texas, and I'm going to pick Texas to upset Houston in the Elite Eight game. 2 seed, a lot of balance for Texas, a lot of balance on that team. They got great guard play and great big guys. I know Kevin Durant tweeted this. I know I mentioned this guy earlier, Dylan Dessou. Kevin Durant saying that he looked like LaMarcus Aldridge. Aldridge, by the way, fantastic college player, very good NBA player for a while. He was probably a top 10 player in the NBA at one point, LaMarcus Aldridge. Dropped 28 points. Dylan Dessou, Texas playing really good ball right now. Won the Big 12 conference tournament. Hook 'em horns to the Final Four. Knocked off Kansas the last 2 times they played too, by the way. So talk about battle tested. They played in what was, I mean, if you look at the tournament right now, probably Big 12, SEC, the 2 best conferences. I mean, Big 10 was good, but the Big 12, I mean, that conference had, look at the last few national titles, Baylor, Kansas. I mean, we've seen all these great runs for the Big 12. So I think Texas gets in the Final Four. I'll say that region too, though. Houston, Miami, Texas, Xavier, all 4 teams capable of making the Final Four. That's a tough one right there. Tough region for Houston to get out of. Sasser's injured, and so is, I know he's playing, but their other guard is also banged up. We'll see if the week off helped them get healthy, but I'm banging on Texas, or betting on Texas to win out of that region. And lastly, this other one's tough, man. Tennessee, Michigan State, Kansas State. It's like one of those like 33% chance for me, maybe 1% for FAU. But I'm going to go with Kansas State because I love Marquise Noel. I talked about him in the earlier segment, averaging 22 points and 12.5 assists per game in this tournament. I've been preaching to the choir. Guard play, experience. 5th-year senior, 2nd in the nation assists per game. He's having his breakout tournament. Marquise Noel leads Kansas State to the Final Four. So I got K-State, Alabama, UCLA, and Texas. 2 2 seeds, a 1 and a 3, which is actually still fairly chalky given all the upsets. I know it's only 1 seed, but nothing too crazy for me. We see a lot of the upsets early on. The first 2 rounds full of upsets. Past the Sweet 16, we'll see an upset, but not typically that many. So I'm going to pick UCLA to win the whole thing with that experience. Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez, both playing in the Final Four 2 years ago. I got UCLA over Alabama in the championship. Alabama actually might be the best team talent-wise, but I think UCLA's experience gets them in the title game. Give me UCLA, baby. That's my only path to victory in our March Madness bracket. I probably wouldn't get the most picks correct. I probably wouldn't get the most Final Four, whatever teams correct, but you get 16 points for picking that team making it in the championship game. I do have UCLA in my title game, so I got to go with what my gut's been saying all this time. I abandoned my gut. I didn't put UCLA as my champ. got to put him as the champ in my second chance bracket.
Yeah, well, even though I'm feeling a little bit more like I should have picked UConn all along, I'm going to stick with that right side of the bracket. I'm still going to go with Houston over UConn to make it to the title game. I'm still going to have Houston winning it all. I'm just going to stick with that part of the bracket is currently constituted. That leads to the left side of the bracket, though, which I think is really, really interesting. I already mentioned earlier, I've got Michigan State coming out of their region to make it to the Final Four. And then as far as making the title game, who's going to be opposite the Houston Cougars? I mean, I don't want to pick Alabama for
They're
myriad
good.
reasons. So I'm not going to. I'm going to pick the Creighton Jays, the Creighton
Oh
Blue
my
Jays to make it
gosh.
to the Final Four. They have a short rotation, but it is a good one now that they are out of Denver, away from the Mile High City, where conditioning looked like it was a little bit of a problem against NC State. They were looking really, really winded, looked more prepared for it in their matchup against Baylor, but they've got a, quote, easy matchup against Princeton. I mean, they have some height. Ryan Kalkbrenner has been
Mizzou thought the
phenomenal
same
in the
thing.
middle for them. Well, Creighton's better than Mizzou. I think by a pretty decent margin. So I really like Creighton
Depends on what
to
Mizzou
make it to
team
the
shows
Elite
up.
Eight. I think they've got an easier path to the Elite Eight. And then, yeah, Brandon Miller, he's been hot and cold for Alabama. That's kind of been their MO all season long. They like to play at a really fast tempo, take a lot of shots, but Creighton is pretty solid on defense, and if they are able to slow down that tempo, Alabama's fifth in the nation in tempo, according to KenPom. Creighton 142nd. If Creighton can play more of their speed, limit the number of shots that Alabama is taking and making, I can see Creighton pulling off an upset fairly handily in this case. And then you know what? Let's go with some non-conventional teams. Let's go Houston over Creighton to win it all for my revised March Madness picks.
Who would have thought that? Maybe even like 5 years ago. I mean, I know Houston was good in the Phi Slamma Jamma era, but you told me 5 years ago, Tom, you and I were talking, and
Mm-hmm.
you would have picked the Houston. Granted, it's revised bracket, but Houston over Creighton. I would have said you're crazy. I
Yeah,
still think you're crazy, but that's March
yeah. It
Madness.
should
You never know
it
what's
should
going to
probably
happen.
be it should probably be Houston over Alabama, but that's just too much chalk, and I don't like Alabama at all. So I'm gonna go with
Sure.
what I want to do.
One thing to keep in mind: a guy's bracket who's incredible. One of my customers at work, Chris Perez is his
Mm-hmm.
name. We have a work bracket challenge. The customers are invited. Winner gets a $500 gift card.
Hmm.
His final four. By the way, he's 99.6 percentile right now, which is about as
Wow.
good as you can get. He's got Alabama over Miami in the championship game. And then he's got Tennessee and Gonzaga in the Final Four. So
Wow.
if that happens, that man is on
Bold.
top of things. That would be pretty nuts. He's a Miami fan, by the way, so a little biased, but
Okay, that explains
didn't pick
it.
him to
That
win the
explains it.
whole thing. But that's a very interesting bracket that I saw. And it's very easy to
Mm-hmm.
scoff at that, but the guy's been right so far. So just putting that out
Absolutely.
there. Putting that out there.
Well, a bracket that certainly has a lot of red on it, and this has been kind of a growing trend in the women's side of the game. More and more upsets over recent years as we're kind of seeing a little bit more of a balance in talent throughout women's basketball. I mean, a one seed Stanford, they go down to Ole Miss in a low scoring affair, 54-49. Indiana, just not a great showing for the Big Ten in either tournament this year. They go down to Miami. So that kind of, mirrors men's and women's side a little bit earlier in the bracket, a little bit different circumstances. But Miami 70-68 over Indiana. So I think, the one favorite, South Carolina, that you still got to pay a ton of juice to pick them to win, even at this stage. I mean, they've been looking fantastic. A 32-point win over Norfolk State, then a 31-point win over South Florida. They've got a matchup against a pretty solid UCLA team. But really, I mean, South Carolina is just rolling through this tournament right now. It's just a matter of who's going to be there to get steamrolled in their way. So, a lot of upsets on the women's side of the bracket, something that we don't often see, but it's really kind of refreshing.
It's actually the second time in the history of the women's tournament that we have 2-1 seeds out before the Sweet 16. Oh, the second time it's ever happened, Tom. So we never see this except for one other time in the history of the tournament. I think this speaks to parity across all the sports. I've mentioned this on this program many times, whether it's at the pro level, the college level. I don't know what it is with the COVID time or what it is with the increased like film, with the preparation. Everyone's better. I don't know, but I feel like we have parity across the board right now. I mean, you look at all these sports, you look at the NBA, the NFL, the MLB, you look at like Champions League soccer. I mean, maybe Georgia football is the outlier, but across all sports at all levels, there's not one team that you look at that you think is so much better than anyone else. I mean, obviously, I picked the Chiefs to win it all. I think the Chiefs are the class of the NFL, but they were an underdog in the Super Bowl. So there really isn't like dynasties right now. There isn't dominant teams right now. I mean, South Carolina is that team right now in the women's game. Now, maybe as an outlier as well, but across the board, there's a lot of pretty even talent. By the way, in the women's tournament, you probably know this in case you don't. Maybe a lot of our viewers don't know. Stanford and Indiana, they actually hosted round of 32 games as one seeds. They not only lost, but they lost on their home courts. By the way, Miami beat Indiana on the men's and ladies side. So Indiana Hoosier fans, not big fans of Miami these days. That's for sure. But I'm actually happy because my women's tournament bracket looks amazing, Tom. Unlike my men's bracket, looks really, really good. I didn't have Stanford in my Final Four. That was huge. Them getting upset greatly helped my bracket. I did have Indiana in the Final Four, but I didn't have them in the championship. I've got South Carolina as the 1 seed in the title game. I've got UConn as a 2. I got Iowa as a 2 still alive. So it was refreshing to see at least my women's bracket looks really good right now. And I do think that, I know it's easy to say South Carolina's steamrolling everyone. There's just a gut feeling, man. It's a gut feeling. Paige Beckers is out. I know that, but UConn, all these years of being that dominant number 1 team, now they're losing in the Elite Eights. Now they're 2 seeds in this tournament. Do not be surprised if UConn wins this thing, Tom. Just a gut feeling. Gino Auriemma, great coach, obviously. Him and Dawn Staley not happy at each other, going at it in the media. Just look for UConn to potentially win this tournament, maybe upsetting South Carolina in the championship game. I did pick South Carolina in my bracket over UConn, but again, my gut right now, it's feeling Huskies on the ladies' side. Not the men's side, but the ladies' side.
Now I'm going to roll with Dawn Staley, Leah Boston. They just have a great squad. The fact that I can't remember what the exact number was, but prior to the tournament even starting, you had to pay like minus 300 juice for South Carolina to win it all out of all the other teams in the tournament. And the fact that it's still that much, I mean, they're just so dominant. I can't go against them.
That's fair.
Moving to the NFL, a move that, Aaron Rodgers claims has been made since, was it last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, something along those lines? 2 Fridays ago, because free agency opened last week. A move that had already been made is that he's going to be playing the season and he's going to be playing for the New York Jets. Here's the problem, though. He's still on the Green Bay Packers roster. What is going on here between the Packers, the Jets, Rodgers? Do you really think this is going to be a move that gets made? And if so, is that the right move for Aaron? Is that the right move for New York?
Boy, it's a messy situation. Look, if you read the reports, if you believe them, which I kind of do, especially coming from guys like Adam Schefter, it seems like the Packers don't want Aaron Rodgers. They don't want him. They simply do not want Aaron Rodgers. And I get it. The guy's a headache. He's maybe that's the tricky part. It's easy to say he's over the hill because he had a bad year, but he did win back-to-back MVPs before then. So it's a tricky situation of which Aaron Rodgers are we getting because Peyton Manning set the single season touchdown mark, passing yards mark, all these records, and 2 years later his arm fell off. Big Ben Roethlisberger, same thing. So it's very hard to gauge. Did Rodgers have an off year or is he over the hill? Because it was weird to see him throwing a lot of interceptions this last year, too. A lot of knucklehead decisions, which we don't see from Rodgers. I think what's going on here is that Green Bay does not want Aaron Rodgers. They want to get the best deal they can from the New York Jets. They want to get a lot from the Jets, and they know the longer they hold out, the more antsy the Jets get because they need Rodgers in their camp. They need him to get started. And the longer Green Bay waits to make this move, I think the better players they'll get. I think this is why this is taking a while to happen. The Jets are kind of in a situation where they kind of have to go with Rodgers. He's by far their best option, and it seems like a lot of the plan Bs are gone. I mean, unless they can somehow swing Lamar Jackson, which looks like he's probably not going to be in Baltimore, unless they can somehow swing him, they're out of options. I mean, who else can they get? I mean, maybe they really like Cam Newton throwing at Pro Day, but that's not better than Aaron Rodgers. Derek Carr, Jimmy Garoppolo, Baker Mayfield, all these like plan B, C, D guys already have new teams. They let go of Mike White. They clearly don't like Zach Wilson. Mm-hmm. That much is clear. So they're kind of in a spot where they probably need to pull the trigger for Rodgers. I mean, and he's kind of at a spot where, I mean, I said this on the show, Green Bay, I think, gives them the best chance to win simply because they're in the NFC and they're in the NFC North. The Jets are in the AFC East. We got the Bills. The Dolphins keep getting better in the offseason if Tua's healthy. The Jets are in a very tough division. And by the way, the Patriots own the Jets. I know the Patriots seemingly aren't as good as they have been in years past, but New England tends to play very well against the Jets. They're in one of the best divisions in the league. They're in the better conference. So Rodgers isn't going to win as much in New York as he can in Green Bay, but looks like Green Bay doesn't want him. So where else could he go, really? I mean, the Jets have a pretty good defense. They have a young star receiver in Garrett Wilson, a running back, Breece Hall, who, by the way, if Breece Hall didn't get hurt last season, they would have had a real chance at that wild card spot. So for me, the Jets making the playoffs really, ironically, doesn't go down so much to Aaron Rodgers for me as it does to Tua. Because I think if Tua's injured, the Dolphins aren't going to make the playoffs. If Tua's healthy, Miami's still better than the Jets, and Rodgers can go to New York. He can win 7, 8 games, 9 games, whatever, and still miss the playoffs. But he just doesn't have a better option right now. I mean, the Raiders already got their guy. Green Bay doesn't want him. Where's Rodgers going to go? It's one of these things where he probably doesn't have a better option, and New York probably doesn't have a better option. So it does seem like it's eventually going to happen. But Green Bay knows they want Jordan Love. They don't care. They don't like Aaron Rodgers. They'll make the man wait. They'll make the Jets wait. I mean, the Jets can't wait forever. So the longer they make him wait, the more they can get a better deal from the New York Jets. This gets done eventually.
Yeah, I think it gets done eventually as well, because if you look at the Packers' MO, they've never really been big spenders when it comes to free agency. And if they know that they're going to be moving forward with Jordan Love, I mean, they have until May 1st to decide if they're going to pick up the 5th-year option on his rookie contract, which is going to be worth about $20.5 million, give or take. They're basically like, well, hey, with or without Aaron Rodgers, we have a starting quarterback 2023 and 2024, and we're going to find out what this Jordan Love kid can do. So, I mean, yeah, it's going to stink to have a $60 million hit on your cap, but if the Packers already have that budgeted in, if they already have that budgeted in, they could say, theoretically, from a negotiating standpoint, they could say, you know what, we're going to keep Aaron Rodgers on our team until we get a representative offer for what we believe is fair value. and then we're just going to have Jordan Love start. We're going to make Aaron Rodgers sit, or it's going to get really, really
that
messy
would
if they
be
want to do something like
amazing.
that.
How amazing would that be if they keep
That
Aaron
would be
Rodgers
fantastic.
and Jordan Love starts? Pat McAfee's show, I might actually tune in for once to hear what Rodgers has to say about that. What a goofball show, man.
That I think that's more posturing. I don't think that's actually really on the table from Green Bay's standpoint. But they're in this position where it's exactly like you said. All these other teams have filled their needs for the quarterback position. I think that the only other kind of sort of couple viable options for quarterbacking would be Atlanta, which I think Atlanta would be well served to go after Lamar Jackson. I think Indianapolis, if they want to get in and say, hey, we'll pay, I think it's like the 35th pick, close enough to a first rounder, we'll send that over to Green Bay for Aaron Rodgers and just kind of spin that wheel of over the hill veteran quarterbacks again. I think that could be an option for them. I think that perhaps Baltimore, in some crazy messed up kind of way, if there was some big blockbuster 3-team trade where the Jets say, you know what, we need to get Lamar Jackson, we need to get a quarterback, we need to get this situated ASAP, and they work out some package, whatever, Aaron Rodgers ends up in Baltimore. There's a lot of crazy machinations that I think they're non-zero.
What does machinations mean?
Let me look up the definition. It's just different possibilities. Yeah, scenarios.
Scenario. And what's the other word you said? The one right after.
A plot or a scheme.
A plot or a scheme. All right,
I don't remember.
I like to know my vocabulary.
I don't remember what it is.
I learn new vocab every week, Tom. One of the main reasons why I come on this show every week is just to expand my vocabulary, learning from what Tom Castleman has. It's called the Word of the Week. What is it again?
Word of the Week. Machinations.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I use that? Can I get that in a sentence? Language of origin, please. I'm just kidding. Go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
I have to pull up the Google page on that again.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different things that I think are non-zero possibilities for happening. But I think ultimately Rodgers to the Jets gets done. I wonder if a little bit of it is Aaron Rodgers having some sort of existential dread of, oh my gosh, I'm Brett Favre. Kind of in the way that Brett
Favre went to the Jets. He's literally Brett Favre.
When you look at your parents and you're like, oh my gosh, this is something my parents do. I'm never going to do that thing. And then you do that thing and you have that moment of realization where you're just like, oh no, I am my father's son or my mother's son. Aaron Rodgers would kind of do the same thing. Brett Favre is essentially kind of like his dad.
It's the same scenario, by the way. I think Aaron Rodgers, sat 2 or 3 years behind Brett Favre then played. Jordan Love sat 2 years.
Jordan Love needs to break this cycle.
It's the exact same thing Green Bay's doing again. As a Bears fan, look, I wish no ill on Jordan Love. But as a Bears fan, if I'm being honest with you, Tom, I'm hoping that it's not the same case where Jordan Love is as great as Aaron Rodgers. Because Brett Favre, obviously, look, you and I agree. Off the field, Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers can't stand these guys.
Oh,
cannot stand either guy. They're both I know I hate to say this, but they're both just bad people. But
yes,
Brett Favre even more so. But as far as on the field, Brett Favre is a top 10 quarterback ever, and Aaron Rodgers is borderline top 5 ever. So you got even better when you had Aaron Rodgers. If Jordan Love's any better, I don't know what we're gonna do. Bear fans, you might just go hibernate as Bears and cry in the corner or something, because surely he's not going to be at that level as those two guys.
Yeah. So a couple other quarterbacks. We mentioned some teams filling needs. We've got Jimmy Garoppolo, the most handsome quarterback in the league, going to the Raiders. We've got Baker Mayfield going to the Bucks for a little bit of a redemption, perhaps, and quite frankly, on a deal, I'm a little bit surprised. So only about $4.5-5 million. That's not a lot of money invested into the quarterback position. Gives him a chance, though, to get back on track. And of course, we already mentioned Derek Carr to the Saints. That was a deal that was done up a couple of shows ago. So, which QB do you think is going to have the most success this year in their given situation?
This is a very easy yet not easy answer. And this comes down to health. If Jimmy Garoppolo can stay healthy, this is the obvious answer. Look, I know Jimmy G's played on better teams. He's been in better situations. these stats that are about to list are a little bit skewed. But you compare Jimmy Garoppolo to Derek Carr and Baker Mayfield, 40-17 record as a starter. Derek Carr, 63-79. Baker Mayfield, 31-38. You look at their passer rating, 99.6 for Jimmy Garoppolo, 91.8 for Derek Carr, 86.5 for Baker Mayfield. Jimmy G is a very underrated player. Historically, he's got a better than 2-to-1 touchdown to pick ratio. I know he plays on a really good team. I know he played on the Patriots at first when they were still really good. I know he played on the Niners. I'm not saying part of that isn't the team, but his passer rating, his win-loss record. I mean, look, those 49er teams, I know we had that run this year with, of course, Brock Purdy, but otherwise, the last few years, 49ers with and without Jimmy G, very different record. Very different record in San Francisco. I think he's simply the best player of these three. He's the most consistent, at least. Derek Carr probably has the most ceiling as far as arm talent. But we've seen Derek Carr play in this league a lot. 63-79. That is a huge sample size. It's pretty clear at this point that Derek Carr is inconsistent. One day you'll get a great player, another day you'll get a terrible player. We've seen enough of Derek Carr to know that he's not consistent enough. So Jimmy G for me also is probably, this is hard to answer. He's on the most talented team, although he's in a tougher division and in a tougher conference. So again, that's where it gets tricky. The Raiders 2 years ago were a playoff team, and they added Davante Adams, who is probably a top 2 or 3 receiver in the league, if not the best. Led the league in receiving touchdowns this last season, 3rd in receiving yards, and we called it a down year for Davante Adams. That's crazy. So I think the Raiders they had 3-4 games. They blew 17-point leads. They should have been a playoff team this past season if they didn't blow those leads. Say what you will about Jimmy G. He knows how to manage the game. If he was the quarterback, fully healthy, they'd probably make the playoffs this past season. So I'm going to put an asterisk on it. Health obviously matters, but I'm just going to go ahead and say Jimmy G is going to be healthy. You know, I'm a positive guy. I like to think for the best. I'm not going to play this whole game. This guy gets hurt again. I'm just going to go out there and say Jimmy G is going to be healthy this year. Raiders will be fighting for a playoff spot. To be honest with you, all 3 of these teams, Tom, record-wise, I think we'll be about the same, right at that 8-9, 9-8, maybe 10-7. Injuries will play a key factor. But I think Jimmy G is going to have the best numbers. He's going to have the best success for that team simply because he plays on the best team and he's got the best players. The only reason to think that it would be Baker or Derek Carr is simply because they play in a weak division. That would be it. I mean, my second best pick would actually be Baker Mayfield. Because I think the Bucks still have a pretty good team. I mean, I know that they're not the Super Bowl team we saw 2 years ago. I know, obviously Gronk's not there, Brown's not there, Fournette's not there, Brady's not there. I know they lost an offensive lineman. I know Arians isn't coaching. I'm not saying it's the same team. It's definitely a few steps down, but there is still a lot of those same players from that Super Bowl team still there. The Bucks, I think, by the way, Tom, if I had to pick one team in the South, I think the Bucks win the division. But I don't know if I could say Baker has more success because they're probably the same scenario as this past year. Win the division, get blown out in the first round. Whereas the Raiders, they have a chance to win a playoff game. It's kind of weird that I think the Raiders have worse odds to make the playoffs, but better odds to win a playoff game for me. I like Jimmy G the best of these guys, so I'm going to say Jimmy G, but health pending, because that's the main concern for Jimmy Garoppolo for me.
Yeah, talk about picking off the meh section of the quarterback shelf here. I think we've got 3 guys that I would say are bottom half quarterbacks, out of 32 teams.
I would
there's a lot of not good in here.
Man, look at passer rating. Jimmy G's passer rating is consistently in the top 5 in the league. I'm not saying he's a top 5 quarterback, but I think Jimmy G for me is in that like 11, 12, 13 range. I think he's a better than average quarterback. Range? Yeah, he's 40-17 with a 99.6 passer rating.
That's like Dak Prescott, Justin Fields, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson territory. I don't put Jimmy G in the same category
Jimmy
as those
G,
guys, quite frankly.
Better than Justin Fields right now. Better than Dak Prescott, 100%. No. Not better than Lamar Jackson. Not sure about Aaron Rodgers, but he's better than those two guys. NFL career passer rating leaders all time. Let me look this up. NFL career passer rating.
Not better than those guys.
You really? The turnover machine, Justin Fields.
I don't think that he's better than Daniel Jones or Kirk Cousins. I'd rather have both of those guys if I'm saying who's my quarterback.
100%, I would have Jimmy G over both of those guys. No question.
He's like Ryan Tannehill territory, Matthew Stafford. Like for me, I think it's going to be. I think Derek Carr is going to have the most success.
6th all-time in career passer rating. History of the NFL, Jimmy Garoppolo, 6th all-time. I'll list the quarterbacks with a better career passer rating than Jimmy G. Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, Russell Wilson. That's the list. Ahead of Tom Brady. So he's
better than that's ahead of Brady, Manning, Montana. Like, I'm not saying like
I know passer rating isn't the end all be all, but he's 6th all time in passer rating. There's no way that Jimmy G isn't the upper half. I'm not saying that I have him outside the top 10. But if you were listing 15 quarterbacks right now, Tom, I'm not saying that Justin Fields doesn't have more talent. I'm not saying that Dak Prescott doesn't have more talent. But consistency, I think he's better than Dak Prescott and Justin Fields. And he might be better than washed-up Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers, he was better last year than Aaron Rodgers. You and everyone, man, selling Jimmy G short. Go out there and prove yourself, Jimmy G. A handsome man and a pretty good NFL player, not a top half quarterback. And come on.
None of these guys are.
Jimmy G is a top 15 quarterback. I'm sorry.
He's not a top 15 quarterback.
Oh,
I don't think he's a top 15 quarterback. Derek Carr is going to be my pick to have the most success. He's going to a good situation. He's got good weapons around him. He's going to be playing in a dome, so that's going to certainly help as far as the statistics go. And then, playing in the division that he's playing in does matter. He's going up against teams that, quite frankly, aren't all that great. So I think the Saints are going to be in a lot of games currently right now. They're my pick to come out of the division. And I mean, we still have the NFL draft and a lot of secondary and tertiary waves of free agency to be coming up here. But if I'm looking at the NFC South and ranking the quarterbacks, I like Derek Carr better than Desmond Ridder. I like him better than Andy Dalton. I like him better than Baker Mayfield. Now, this is going to change because the Panthers do have the number 1 overall pick. So if they go Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, all of a sudden he becomes my second favorite quarterback in that division. But as of right now today, I think he's in a good position to succeed and kind of be the conductor for an offense that does have top-end potential. I mean, Chris Olave, fantastic rookie season at receiver. You got Alvin Kamara. His availability is going to be in question, but when he is on the field, pending these legal issues that he has, he's going to be a dynamic weapon that Derek Carr can use. Michael Thomas, he's got a lot to prove coming off of a couple of years of injury. We've seen the talent.
I'll believe when I see him on the field. I'll believe it when he actually plays. I actually like Baker better with Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. I like Baker Mayfield's situation better personally.
He is in a better situation, but I don't think he's a better quarterback than Derek Carr. Again, we're talking about...
They're both inconsistent. They're both inconsistent.
Yeah, we're talking about three really, I think, flawed quarterbacks in this conversation.
Maybe speak for yourself. Maybe 2. I like Jimmy G. I can't wait to see Jimmy G prove
like
himself
him
to you. No, you don't.
I don't think he's the top 15 quarterback.
Well, clearly,
I can like him without overstating how good I think he is.
He's just okay if he's not top 15. I like Jimmy G because I've got him in my top 15 quarterbacks.
All right.
I
That's
like
fine.
Jimmy G.
For
Uh,
the
man, I'm
for,
gonna be cheering for the Raiders this year now. I'm fired up, man. I'll be going Raider
really,
Nation. Even as a Chief fan, I hope Jimmy G proves everyone wrong this year.
I think
By
he's
the way,
going to be the
speaking of best
fourth best quarterback
situations,
in that division.
he's got Devontae Adams. He's not going to be the fourth best quarterback. Russell Wilson, talk about over the hill. Maybe the third best. I mean, look, Mahomes is the best.
Justin
We'll
Herbert
see on
clearly is
Herbert's.
better.
I mean,
What do you
Herbert's
mean we'll
better.
see?
He's
Herbert's
better.
like borderline top 5. Jimmy G's nowhere near borderline top 5. If you want to argue, okay, does he slide into the back end of the top 15? I can accept that kind of argument, but he's nowhere near Justin Herbert.
I don't have Justin Herbert in my top 5, by the way. I know he's not. He's in the
near
top
the top
10.
5. He's 5, 6, 7.
It's interesting because Jimmy G, again, it's hard to measure clutchness. It's a 4-quarter game. It's one of those deals where Justin Herbert, I think, is a better player than Jimmy G. But if game was on the line, I'm taking Jimmy G over Justin Herbert, no question. Like if it's a playoff game, I like Jimmy G over Justin Herbert. Regular season game, I like Justin Herbert better. Jimmy G's a leader. His teammates love him. That San Francisco locker room loves him. Justin Herbert, to me, again, my gut feeling, he does not inspire those leadership qualities. That's why you saw our Chargers blow that long lead. So look, who's going to put up better numbers in the same situation? Herbert will pull up better cumulative stats. Game on the line. I'm taking Jimmy G. By the way, no question, Jimmy Garoppolo over that aging, washed-up Russell Wilson. I don't care if you give him Sean Payton. Russell Wilson is cooked. So put some respect on Jimmy Garoppolo's name, baby. Jimmy G.
All right.
I can't wait to I
that.
can't wait to talk about this as the season goes on, man. I'll be every time he shows up and shows out, you'll be the first to hear about it. I can't wait.
I'm sure that I will.
In the words of Bart Scott, can't wait. Can't wait. Bart Scott, baby. Sal Palantonio.
Now that we've had official free agency open up and all those deals that were coming out prior to our last show are now officially official, what NFL team has had the best offseason so far? We've also had a couple of trades, of course, the big one being the Chicago Bears, offloading that number 1 overall pick for a fairly significant haul that around the industry, a lot of people are saying that's about as good as you can get. So do the Bears kind of inspire you saying, hey, I am excited for what they are doing? They have had a great offseason so far. Is it somebody else who's come out and made key signings, key trades, etc.?
Just real quick, I know we talked about the Bears one last week. I know it's a new management. A lot of what the Bears got is draft picks. And I've just seen the Bears blow so many draft picks in recent years that I simply cannot go with the Bears. I think the long-term potential of what they made could be good. I also think Tom Castleman personally, I hope I'm wrong, but I think Bryce Young is better than Justin Fields. I think CJ Stroud might be better than Justin Fields. So it depends on what the Bears do with these picks. I mean, if they were going to trade the number 1 pick, I think they got enough for it. But when it comes to best NFL offseason moves, I'm looking at proven talent. I'm not looking at draft picks, which may or may not materialize. Sure. And I'm looking at fit and pairing. How do you win in the National Football League? You win by passing the ball and stopping the pass. I mean, honestly, receivers and corners nowadays are very important positions in the league. I like what the Miami Dolphins have done, specifically getting Jalen Ramsey to pair with Xavier Howard. You've got 2 all-pro, Pro Bowl cornerbacks, one of, if not the best duo in the NFL. Then on the other side, you've got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, 2 great receivers, one of, if not the best 1-2 duo. And then Vic Fangio, maybe the best defensive coordinator in the league. They got him as a DC in the offseason. Talk about moves, not even a player move, but getting a coaching move. That is absolutely fantastic for the Miami Dolphins. I think they got a few other pieces. David Long Jr. at linebacker, Deshaun Elliott at safety. Their defense with the player personnel and the coach they got to coach the defense, I think greatly improved, specifically in that cornerback spot. That's phenomenal, man. The Dolphins, I think for me, if you told me Tua's going to be healthy for all 17 games, it's a big if.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaning with them as the best team in the AFC East ahead of the Buffalo Bills. Now, I'm probably going to pick the Bills in our preseason picks because something in me says Tua misses 2 or 3 games, and that's how they miss out. The Jets are going to be a good team this year, but I think Miami's team is very scary. If you told me Tua's fully healthy, that's the 3rd best team in the AFC for me, behind the Chiefs and Bengals. I absolutely love what the Dolphins have done in the offseason. Their offense was very good last year, and now their defense vastly improving. Young, good coach, and now we get an experienced coach on the defensive side as well. Dolphins, man, they're killing it in the offseason. Other team that I really like, the Dallas Cowboys. Even though I was loving them, now I still love them a little bit less that Dalton Schultz left, but I think getting kind of the same situation is what I'm talking about. I mean, the quarterback's the most important spot. We know the line matters, but in the NFL, you win games by passing the ball and stopping the pass. That's kind of the key thing right now in the league. What do the Cowboys do? They got Stephon Gilmore as a cornerback to pair with Trayvon Diggs, another great 1-2 duo in the cornerback spot. And then they got Brandon Cooks, who, by the way, is a very good receiver. Speaking of receivers whose numbers would be better if they didn't play on the Texans, and now he's going to be the number 2 guy to CeeDee Lamb. He was asked to be the number 1 there. For a number 2 receiver, Brandon Cooks is fantastic. Like, if that's your number 2 option, that's really good. And also, they unloaded Ezekiel Elliott. Look, Zeke may not be as bad as a lot of people think, but he's clearly not as good as Tony Pollard. There's very few people who think Tony Pollard isn't better than Zeke. This clears the way. It's one of those like situations where it's like, well, you got Tony Pollard. He's a better player. He's more explosive, but Zeke is really good on the goal line. Zeke is getting paid way more money. We can't be paying this guy this much money and not using him, right? Well, now he's gone. Tony Pollard gets to carry the show. So offloading Zeke, I think, also helps them. I think they picked up Ronald Jones as a solid backup to Pollard now. So I think the Dolphins and the Cowboys, for me, are the 2 best teams in the offseason, personally. Did a lot of good stuff. Can't wait to see what happens with Kansas City, by the way. I know they offloaded Frank Clark, Orlando Brown Jr., who, by the way, the Chiefs offered him more money. He didn't want that much. Then he got less money with the Bengals. So talk about a guy who didn't cash in. But, you know, Chiefs and Eagles lost a lot of guys in the offseason, but the Chiefs lost Tyreek Hill last year. They did just fine. So we'll see what they do. But Miami and Dallas, for me, were the 2 teams who made the most moves in the offseason so far, at least. Obviously, NFL draft still around. We can still get free agents. We can still get trades. It's not all over. But at the moment, those are my 2 biggest winners.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we've talked a lot about the Bears one. I think that's a huge move for where that franchise is currently at, which is worst in the NFL, earning that number 1 overall draft pick for sure. And I like the moves that they've been making to kind of set themselves up to be a team that could possibly take a leap and make that worst to first in the NFC North, given that that's going to be a little bit weaker of a division. But even if they don't, they're not super capped out over the next couple of years. They can maintain some flexibility if they find out, okay, Justin Fields is not taking that next step as a passer. Phenomenal runner, you know, threw the ball great when he was in college, but for whatever reason, that's not translating to the NFL. So they're in a position where they can make moves if they need to. I really like what they've been doing so far. 2 teams at the higher end of the expectation scale. I really like what San Francisco and Cincinnati have done as well. Cincinnati, you already mentioned, they picked up Orlando Brown Jr.
Yeah, that was a good
to
one
bolster
too.
up an offensive line. That's a really good move. It's all about making sure that your franchise guy is protected as best as he can be. And I believe that's a front-loaded deal, which is significant because the Bengals are right around that time where you got to pay up for Joe Shiesty if you want to keep him on your team. And I think that he's going to be committed to being a member of the Bengals for a good long time. Also, like the San Francisco 49ers, what they did, picking up Sam Darnold to be their second quarterback. I'm just joking about that one. Javon Hargrave, getting him for the interior of their defensive line. Talk about
taking them from the Eagles too, right?
Fortifying your strengths, taking away a key piece from a conference rival. That's absolutely what you do when you have a really, really good defense. Because he's somebody who can get to the passer from the interior. We all know about Bosa, what he can do from the edge. This gives you that much more depth along the defensive line. And then, I was tongue-in-cheek about Sam Darnold, but I think he's good as a second or third quarterback on the team, especially when you have Brock Purdy going under a Tommy John surgery, essentially. And he's not going to be able to throw a football for the next 3 months. So it's kind of a question of, okay, how ready is he going to be by training camp? You really don't want to go into a season coming off of a game where you were down 4 quarterbacks in total with Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, and then Josh Johnson. Horrible situation. You go out, you make sure that on the cheap you have a guy who's at least a representative NFL quarterback. I'm not saying Sam Darnold's anywhere near the top of anything, but if you're saying, hey, Sam Darnold's my backup quarterback, I think that's good. I think that's a good backup quarterback because there's not nearly enough good quarterbacks going around. I don't get excited about a
backup quarterback. I mean, I get what you're saying.
If they had a viable backup quarterback to Brock Purdy in that game, I think that's we might be talking about a 49er
but Brock Purdy was
rematch.
Was the third string quarterback entering the season. I would say they had
I'm just saying
Jimmy G as a backup and Brock Purdy's a third stringer. You can't expect to have 3 injuries.
As much depth. You built up as much depth as you can. I just like teams that commit to that quarterback position because it is the most important. You need as many representative guys as you can get your hands on that's feasible underneath the cap space. So I think it was a good move. But really, it's Javon Hargrave is the headliner. I'm being mostly tongue-in-cheek.
I know. Did you hear who the Chiefs might get as the backup quarterback?
No, because Chad Henney's retired, correct?
They're looking at Carson Wentz.
I can't see Carson Wentz being happy being the backup.
They're looking at him. Maybe he can learn from Andy Reid. Maybe like a 1-year deal. He learns from Andy Reid and goes elsewhere. If
I'm a Chiefs fan, I'm terrified if Carson Wentz is on my team. Because that means you're one Patrick Mahomes away from Carson Wentz, who he's had one really good season and has not been good since.
No, I agree.
Really
I
quickly,
think it's
we'll
interesting.
move over to the World Baseball Classic. We have serious competitive baseball in March. It's been fantastic to be catching all of the highlights on that one, or if you have the means of being able to watch it live, that as well, of course. Last night we had Japan with a 1-run win over the United States to win the Classic. Once again, Mike Trout's Angels teammates let him down for getting
right?
No win.
Kidding. Sure, that's a good one. I like that.
But fantastic theater. Fantastic theater all around. What stands out to you, either from a tournament at large perspective or a Team USA performance perspective?
So actually I watched a decent chunk of the championship. So I think it started at 6 Eastern or 7 Eastern, 6 o'clock. I was working at Sports Memorabilia, my podcast show. 6 o'clock was my dinner break. Watched the beginning of the game, had the game on in the background during the show. Then I caught the 9th inning. We got off the air just in time for the 9th inning. And that was, I think I said this at the top of the show, the most dramatic 9th inning I've watched since the Cubs 2016 World Series championship. I guess that inning was extra innings was the biggest drama. The 9th was dramatic too, though. So the 5th World Baseball Classic, 3 wins now for Japan, 1 for USA, 1 for Dominican Republic. Game on the line, 2 outs, 3-2 Japan. It's Shohei Ohtani, who is probably the best complete baseball player because he pitches and hits. Mike Trout, his teammate, might be the second best baseball player, third best baseball player. Essentially, you can argue that you had the 2 best baseball players in the world teammates together who can't even make the playoffs because baseball need more than two guys. And Ohtani, look, man, he throws 100, 100, 102, and then 87-mile-per-hour slider. What in the world can Mike Trout do with that? I don't care how good he is. It could have been Babe Ruth, Barry Bonds, Ted Williams up there. Would have been the same result. That's ridiculous. Shohei Ohtani. The man hit just under 500 for the tournament, drove in a bunch of runs, hit the ball for power, hit for average, and he comes in and shuts the door in the ninth. Absolute dramatic. So that was actually the game that I watched. I do have FS1. I do have it on my Xfinity. I've got it on my Fubo TV. I'll be honest, Tom, I was mostly watching SportsCenter highlights, but the championship game, I had it on. I was very invested, and it was a great game. USA, by the way, the thing that really stood out is their lack of great starting pitchers because their lineup was incredible in this tournament. I mean, you've got Mookie Betts, Mike Trout, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Tim Anderson of the White Sox was hitting ninth on that team. That is a loaded team, Mr. Castleman. So did really like what the World Baseball Classic was. I'll hit on it a little bit more in my statement. But I think this is something the game of baseball needed. And it's just something that's just special. It's every 4 years. It's like the World Cup, the Olympics. You play for your country pride. I don't know if you saw Ohtani's pregame speech saying, look, we're done admiring these USA players. Let's not admire them in Major League Baseball. Let's go out there and beat them. By the way, another breakout star in this tournament, Masataka Yoshida. He led an all-time record for World Baseball Classic RBI in this tournament. He'll be a Boston Red Sox. I think that Trey Turner with 5 home runs was huge. Big-time performance for USA. I think that it was kind of a message from Japan, by the way. Look, we are maybe the best baseball nation. We've won 3 out of these 5. I know America won the last one, but Japan, holy cow. How about Yu Darvish, by the way? Kyle Schwarber going deep off Yu Darvish. That was another teammate matchup. That one America won. The other one of Ohtani versus Trout, they didn't. But that was literally the best thing that could have happened for the sport of baseball. You have those 2 megastars going at it, and SportsCenter advertised the heck out of it. It was their lead intro. They talked about it constantly. And I'll be honest with you, I wasn't sick of it. That was cool. I can't remember the last time baseball was this cool. So good for the World Baseball Classic. Definitely fantastic stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really, really neat because, at least for me, because I don't really watch soccer all that much. And even if I did, not necessarily like United States local soccer. Like a lot of people that watch soccer, it's more Premier League, more Euro League, like all the different across the pond divisions and leagues that you have. The interesting thing about this is that when it comes to big exhibitions like, say, the Olympics, yeah, when Team USA is there, most of the guys that we see on a nightly basis are there. I mean, I know, Jokic goes and plays for a different team. Like we have different guys, couple of stars, but the World Baseball Classic, I mean, because baseball is made up of so many players from other parts of the world, we get to see a lot of our favorite guys, like, playing for Cuba. You got Yoan Moncada, you got Eloy Jimenez, you've got a lot of great talent
Moncada
all
get hurt
around.
again?
He did a little bit, but he'll be fine.
injured.
It's like a minor injury.
Okay.
But yeah, this is the sort of thing to talk about injuries specifically. I know that that's been a big gripe for a lot of these Major League Baseball teams of, no, we don't want our players to play in this event because they might get injured. First off, you've got Gavin Lux tearing his ACL in a spring training game. You have, I'm blanking on the pitcher from Tampa Bay, Glasnow. He had a little bit of an arm issue that's going to be keeping him out for a while in a spring training game. You can get hurt playing baseball at just about any point in time. So I think that that's a little bit of a I don't know, like a kind of a baseless, useless claim to say that, oh, injury is the reason why we shouldn't have our players. The players
Agreed.
themselves want to play in this event. I mean, I think it
Mike
was
Trout
Nelson
did.
Cruz where they said, where he was doing an interview and it's just like, hey, World Series or World Baseball Classic. And he was just like, oh, it's so close, which is mind boggling because we think, oh, the World Series as being the pinnacle of baseball achievement, but the World Baseball Classic proves that it isn't. I mean, the World Series is which city in the continental US and then Toronto, Canada, which of these teams is the best, whereas these guys are going out and this is the real World Series where you have
Sure.
all of these different teams competing.
It's a
I think
world
it's great
tournament.
for the sport of baseball. It's a ton of fun and it's great and refreshing to see these guys playing with a different level of excitement and a different level of energy and grandstanding and playing up to the crowd. And, we like looking at trash talk. We like the touchdown celebrations and the sack celebrations. We don't get a lot of that in baseball. Randy Arozarena going up,
Bat flip.
robbing that home run, and
The
then
stare
just
down. Yeah, that was
just the
awesome.
stare down. That's incredible. Like baseball
Yeah.
should be like that all the time. It's a long season, 162 games. The last thing I want, and John Smoltz is kind of like the town crier for the baseball police type of thing. They're like, oh, he made the catch, and then he grandstanded. It's like, get out of here. Make baseball more fun. That the World Baseball Classic shows what baseball can be if we just allow ourselves to enjoy these guys playing this phenomenal game. So huge fan of the World Baseball Classic. It was great to see, especially Team USA taking it seriously, where you've got Mike Trout, who's all in on it. Mookie Betts saying, yeah, Mikey called me up and say, let's go play together. Like, that's the sort of ambassadorship that we need because baseball is so regional in America, even it is so siloed that you can have somebody like Mike Trout, one of the best players of all time, and we hardly ever get to see or hear from him because he's playing on the West Coast. This type of event puts him front and center. It's going to draw a lot more casual eyeballs to baseball this upcoming season, I think.
Yeah, good stuff. I couldn't agree more with everything you said. All right, betting locks of
Yeah.
the week. The previous week we both went 2-1. This week both went 1-2. So you can't win them all. I had Mizzou plus 1.5 against Utah State. I told you, Tom, Mizzou would win. I bet big on that game. By the way, that was like a mortgage bet almost for me. Paid off. Tigers winning 76-65. I wasn't as lucky in my other two college games. VCU +4 versus St. Mary's. St. Mary's winning 63-51. NC State +5.5 against Creighton. Creighton winning 72-63 by 9. That was within 3 to 4 points most of the way, but down the stretch, NC State did not deliver. You were 1-2. You missed the Utah State game. You had Utah State against your alma mater. Shame on you, Tom Castleman. You had Boise State.
Was I wrong for thinking that, though?
Well, you were wrong this time. You were wrong this time. Yeah. Boise State to beat Northwestern. Northwestern winning by 8. And you had Arkansas -2 over Illinois. Woo Pig winning 73-63. What do you have this week, good sir?
Well, I'm going to go with more NCAA March Madness because that is the main event now. So I'm going to go with a team I'm making it to the Final Four. The UConn Huskies -4 over the Arkansas Razorbacks. I think this is going to be the most balanced team that Arkansas has seen this tournament, perhaps all season. I mean, I know they play in the SEC, so they saw Alabama. So I put UConn right up there, though, as far as talent and balance. So give me the Huskies -4. I'm going to go ahead and go against you on this one because I have a feeling you're going to have it as your lock. Give me Gonzaga +1.5. The Bulldogs as a short underdog against the UCLA Bruins. I think this is going to be a tight game, and I think 1.5 is right where the line ought to be because I think the game is going to be that close. I'm going with Gonzaga because I really like their offense. I really wish that their defense were a bit better, but maybe if their defense were a bit better, we wouldn't even be having this matchup as a 2-3 seed. Gonzaga would be much higher in the tournament. And then Florida Atlantic and Tennessee, give me, this is going to be tight, give me the under 130.5. FAU against Memphis. That was a game that was underneath that number. Higher scoring game against Fairleigh Dickinson, and then you look at what Tennessee has done, absolutely just chokehold strangling Duke, and doing something similar to Louisiana. So I'm going to take the under on that one. 130.5 is a really short number, but I think these are two tough teams that are going to be really, really physical. I don't think we're going to have a ton of shots falling in this game. So that's what I have for my locks of the week.
In my experience doing the show with you, Tom, more often than not, when we go ahead and put the same game on the betting locks of the week, we actually agree. We are very, very, very different when it comes to the tournament. We picked 2 games as our betting locks of the week, and we are going different on both of them. So like you, I also like to go with college basketball. I mean, look, let's have some fun. We won't be able to pick college games much going forward. I guess just next week maybe, and then it's over for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and pick an all NCAA card as well, and I'm going to go against you. I got UCLA -1.5 over Gonzaga. Just check the updated lines. UCLA is a better team. They played a tougher schedule, played in a tougher conference. Rematch at the final 2 years ago, but Gonzaga's without 2 of its 3 best players from that team. Now, meanwhile, UCLA, for me, has got their 2 best players left, Tiger Campbell, Jaime Jaquez. Gonzaga lost 5 games this year. Just not a very Gonzaga-like season. Their conference is not good, Tom. Say what you will. Gonzaga's conference is not good. UCLA, I think, is a superior team for me. I think that they've got a better overall team. They got more great players. I know Gonzaga's got Timmy, but he doesn't have, Suggs or Kispert, some of these other guys. And that's why Gonzaga was a 3 seed this year, not a 1. So I think UCLA is the higher seeded team. They're the better team. They've got more experience. They should win by 2 or more. It's a virtual pick 'em. I think UCLA will win.
Pretty much.
So at -1.5, give me the Bruins. Also going opposite you here, Arkansas +4 versus UConn. I'm 50-50 on this game, but I'm leaning Arkansas wins. So if I'm going to pick them outright, I might as well take the +4, right? I mean, look, this team is tournament ready. They've been in 2 straight Elite Eights. Nothing phases them. Down 8 at the half against defending national champion Kansas, and they won the game. So more recent tournament experience pays off for them. Musselman's a great coach. Council the Fourth is a great player. Great guard play for Arkansas. I think they went outright. But with +4 for our show, give me the Hogs +4. And lastly, I'm going Princeton +10 versus Creighton. I think Creighton's going to win the game, but 10 points is a lot. Love a Cinderella story. Love what Princeton's doing right now. They're playing great basketball. Plain and simple, they're in the Sweet 16 because they're in a great rhythm. Losing by 10 points is a lot for a college basketball game. A lot of these games, are a little bit lower scoring, possession by possession. Princeton's going to slow the game down. They'll play smart. They won't turn the ball over. They actually have, pretty tall team too, capable of getting rebounds. I think Princeton covers 10 points in this game.
All right. Sounds good. Looking forward to all those games. We're going to bypass trivia this week as we're a little bit crunched on time and jumping right into salutes and statements of the week. My statement of the week is going to be, let's not overrate NCAA tournament results. I mean, I think the prime example is Purdue. Purdue won the Big Ten conference this year in the regular season. They won the Big Ten conference tournament as well. Don't know why I had trouble thinking of that word. By all means, Purdue had a really, really good season, yet they're going to be most remembered for being the second 1 seed to lose to a 16 seed. I want to be very clear. The NCAA tournament, it's one of those things where it's called, this is for the, quote, national title, but it's not in any sort of series the way that they have for baseball or softball, or even, you can't really say a national title truly for football because you're taking only a couple of the top teams. It's not really a playoff format the way that, say, the NFL has it. So when it comes to, hey, who had a successful season or determining who gets hired or fired for a particular job based on a fairly randomized outcome. You have to win 6 individual games. It's harder to pick the perfect NCAA bracket than it is to win the lottery. Just for a little bit of scale in terms of the math
It's
on
never
that
going to
front.
happen. Never going to happen.
So when you're talking about folks that are griping about, hey, our team is out in this round, Mizzou hasn't won since 2010. They haven't won a tournament game, or Mike Izzo's great because he does well in the tournament.
Tom Izzo.
That's too small of a sample size. What did I say?
You said Mike.
I said Mike Izzo. Oh, whoops.
Yeah, Mr. Castle.
But at any rate, I think that people bemoaning their teams come NCAA tournament time and how, we never do well or we always fall short or whatever it is. Focus on the things that are a larger sample size. Focus on getting good coaches, good players that win you your conference title, win you your conference tournament. That's the mark of a truly successful season, not this semi-arbitrary, really exciting, really entertaining. But this isn't really the way of determining who is the best team. This is a glorified end-of-season exhibition into which we put far too much stock when it comes to who's a coach that's going to get hired, who's a coach that's going to get fired. So for all the fan bases, I know there's a lot of alums hurting out there from a lot of different schools. You guys had successful seasons regardless of how well this tournament is going for you.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but no one's going to listen to you, Tom. It just,
I know.
It's the way it works. You look at these coaches of these lower seeds that are now getting hired to better jobs.
Anderson.
Yep. So that's just how the game works, fair or not. I mean, yeah, the NCAA tournament, the best team doesn't always win. Sometimes the best team does win. I mean, there's better odds that the best team wins.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's a one-game situation. So if this was a best of 7, we wouldn't like it as much. If we're being honest, why do people like March Madness better than the NBA playoffs? Because it's not a 7-game series. I mean, it's a one-off. So I do mostly agree with you, but I don't think that
it shouldn't be the basis for hiring and firing people for that reason, I think.
More or less, I agree, but then there has to be something to be said about if there's an ongoing trend where your team doesn't deliver in the tournament. I'm not basing it off one tournament, but I mean, look, sometimes
is Mark Few a good coach? Is Gonzaga a good program? They've never won the title, but they're consistently atop their conference. Like, that's what I'm saying.
They're not losing in the first round, though. Like, it's different if you're always losing in the first round, is a high seed. I think there's a lot of factors that go into it. For the most part, I agree with you, but I do think that tournament success has to matter to a certain extent when it comes to hiring, firing, etc. But I look at not one tournament. If you're at an institution for 10, 15 years, you got to look at everything you did. But I do agree in the sense that one tournament often gets you too excited or not excited enough. So I'm I kind of see where you're coming from, but I also do think over a long period of time, you are judged by how you did in the tournament over a long career. But I'm not going to say Matt Painter's a terrible coach because of this one year, but I could argue maybe he's overhyped because he hasn't had success in the tournament as a whole over his career. Anyways, though, my statements real quick. I have a salute first. Salute to Willis Reed. Nick's great passes away at 80, I believe, yesterday. Hall of Famer, famous for that NBA Finals Game 7. He was supposed to be out, wasn't supposed to play, comes in, scores the first 2 baskets, doesn't score the rest of the game, inspires his team. The Knicks win the NBA championship. Hall of Fame player Willis Reed, R.I.P. to a legend. My statement, normally I go pretty bold, Tom. This is not bold at all, but this is just a general feeling, kind of like what I've been thinking about the last 24 hours. Why did you like the World Baseball Classic? Why did I like it so much? Why did people like it so much when baseball, to be honest with you, at the moment, isn't really very cool? It's simply because there's something to be said about that national pride. It's also why we love March Madness. Look, there is a lot of people who prejudge the NBA who view these as rich, spoiled people, that they're playing for money, they're playing for legacy. The truth is, yeah, they get paid, but they're also playing wanting to win. But it doesn't create that same feeling. It's why we love the World Cup, why it's my favorite sporting event, why we love the Olympics, why we love March Madness. Like, I know some of the schools get compensated. I know in the Olympics you get X amount of money. World Cup players get X amount of money for winning, but it's not like a multi-million-dollar salary. It's split among the players. The best player doesn't get so much more than, the bench player, etc. So monetary wise, there's not much of a monetary prize you get relative to what you're making at your teams and your contracts, etc. So it's the simple human nature of school pride, national pride. That is why the World Baseball Classic is something that's amazing. That's why the World Cup, that's why the Olympics, that's why March Madness. Those are our favorite sporting events, the coolest sporting events, because of that general feeling. And there's nothing that the NFL, NBA, MLB, there's nothing you can do to fix that. Mm-hmm. Once you put that USA jersey on, or you put that college jersey on, and that's, by the way, one of the reasons why I could argue that college players shouldn't get paid, then a lot of people would look at them differently. I know. I don't want to open up this debate because I've got a dentist appointment in 13 minutes. I'm 2 minutes away, but might be late for the dentist. Salute Your Sports Matters More. I'm not going to open up this whole can. This could be a discussion for another time. But it's the sheer fact of when there's less money on the line, when it's more for your school pride, your country pride, just creates a whole different atmosphere. And the fact that the World Baseball Classic, like the World Cup, like the Olympics, once every 4 years, the truly elite people might get a second shot, might get a third shot, but a lot of these people may never, ever, ever be on that setting. It's that one opportunity to do it for your country. Absolutely love any world events. That's going to do it for us this show, Tom Castleman. Excellent show. Cannot wait for next week. Let's go UCLA Bruins, baby. Have a good one, Tom.
See ya.